What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Monday early week college basketball betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as they do each and every Monday, are Mike Calabrese and Greg Waddell. Sort of a kind of a funeral morgue around here for Greg and I. Our teams went down yesterday, and will not go to the Super Bowl. There's nothing worse if he goes down the conference championship and then you have to listen to Super Bowl coverage for 2 weeks. Greg, how you handling it?
I was Googling how to get a lobotomy, so not well. I'm hurting, and it's a type of pain that I've never even imagined what it would feel like, where at least I feel like you've got some, you know what it's supposed to hurt like. I'm still learning what the hurt feels like, so it's tough today.
Yeah, I could tell you that I actually feel worse for you. The Ravens had a horrendous game plan. I don't know why they didn't run the ball. And it's a college basketball podcast, but I'm going to vent for a couple seconds. But they deserve to lose. Man, I went and watched both games back. The bounces that the 49ers got, all in it felt like a 1 minute span. And then, the fourth down drop, the fumble, the off the face mask 50-yard catch. That was brutal. So I actually think that you guys have it a little worse. And yeah, I know Billy Cundiff, so I know pain. So it was a rough week. I lost Bills. Mahomes took out it's like that meme with going door to door. Took out my Bills 50-1 last week, and then my Ravens future this week. So yeah, it was a rough week. And then everything I said in college basketball was also incorrect. So it was a fun week for me. Congrats to you, Greg, on our head-to-head, which was never a sweat. I think Ohio State lost by like 40 in that game. So you're up 1-0. And this, if you don't watch our live show, this applies to Mike and Mike too. Anyone who beats me head-to-head for the season gets $500 at the end of the season. So that you could have just won if we don't go head-to-head again. But great call there. I mean, Northwestern just absolutely rolled. But we got and I should say hi to Mike, who was graciously going to because I call our producers semi-terrorists for making Greg and I do this. So Mike graciously said, I'll do the pod. I'll do a solo pod after I offered. And he said he would do a mid-season SWACtion report. And I just thought I had flashbacks of Mississippi Valley State and Delta Devils talk. And I said, all right, I got to show up. So Mike, you don't have to do a solo SWAC pod today.
Well, I figured that would get you out of bed. That's better than a cup of coffee. The pure fear of talking, Grambling and Southern shooting regression. I know it does not compare, but we were just trading notes, Greg and I, before the recording. Just a house of horrors for me in terms of college basketball lately. Another backdoor cover. Kansas hits that 3 at the buzzer to win by the hook. But the cherry on top for me was a moneyline parlay in which I had Colorado State as the last leg, and they blew an 11-point lead to Wyoming with 1 minute and 11 seconds to go. If anyone watched that game, it's unbelievable, but also kind of believable because Colorado State cannot grab a goddamn rebound to save their life. That's been the narrative on them. But kudos to our pod because we brought it up, 2 episodes ago, talking about how many teams are the Mountain West really going to get into the tournament? Because at the time it was like, oh, you can get like 5 teams out of this conference. They're going to be a big threat. Colorado State is in a tailspin now. And I want to see emotionally how they react to this because that's a game that you absolutely can never lose. And now they have a losing record in the Mountain West. So you go from a ranked team to being outside of the top 25, kind of headed in the wrong direction. So yeah, it has been a house of horrors and just kind of a sad gambling run, but hopefully we can get it turned around this week.
I had flashbacks, speaking of flashbacks, of 2 years ago. I had like a month, the worst run of my life in college basketball. And it was if you ever watch a game with me, I'm very calm. I always will yell, bitch, and scream on Twitter because I genuinely care and want to win every bet and want people to know that I care. But a very calm, the only time I almost felt like punching my wall was when I was on the worst run of all time, and Colorado State was up like 10 with like 50 seconds to go against San Diego State, and I was laying 1.5, and they couldn't inbound the ball, and they somehow blew the lead. But then Isaiah Stevens hit a game winner to win by 1. And at that point, you want them to miss it and lose and blow the whole thing. And I was like, this has to be a joke at this point. But yeah, it's a team that doesn't really turn the ball over too. So like, generally speaking, so you wouldn't think that they would blow at 11. I mean, that was unbelievable. Wyoming, I think, got 2 rebounds on missed free throws in the final seconds. Insane. So today we'll talk early week spots, Monday, Tuesday, that we have circled. We will talk a little buy, sell in the Pac-12, and then we'll do we'll start with a couple, if you want to rant. Mike, you just got in a little rant there, but if you want to rant or just key takeaways from the weekend, I'll kick things off with I'll stay in the Mountain West. I'll say that I was impressed with my only win. The only thing I got right was Utah State winning at Boise State. Was impressed just with their composure. It's a tough environment. And they ended up tying it at the end of regulation, winning in overtime. But that's a big road win. It's hard to win in the road in the Mountain West against the superior teams. But I was really impressed with Utah State in that game. And I will say something that we did get wrong, but right, was we talked about just the potential, the unlocked potential of this New Mexico team. And, they basically didn't have their backcourt playing together for most of the season. And we missed an op. We talked about like a Final Four sleeper, right? A team with that backcourt that can make a run, and missed an op. I mean, now they're at the peak of their market value, but missed an opportunity maybe like a month ago to take a flyer on them to get to the Final Four. But they obliterated Nevada. And I'm not convinced that they would win the national title if they played every game in the pit. No, sadly they can't, but they are a machine right now, and especially at home. But they also took care of business, on the road, 20-point wins at Air Force and San Jose State, like not messing around at all after beating Utah State and San Diego State. I mean, I think they have, 5 straight wins by double digits. So they're on a roll. Missed opportunity to kind of invest in them before they got clicking, but they're up to like 16, 17, 18, 19 on some of these, if you go to Haslametrics or KenPom. So they're rolling. And I feel like a little bit regret not getting involved with them in some way. But you're right. There's some cannibalization going on. Colorado State, I don't know. Like, I fear for their post defense against San Diego State because it's bad. And I fear for them getting bullied a bit. But I mean, you want to talk about a spot? They lost at Nevada, lose in heartbreaking fashion to Wyoming. Now you host San Diego State in like close to a must win. Now it's all of a sudden it's a must win game for Colorado State at home against the San Diego State team that on the road has been bad. I mean, they lost to Boise by 1. They got blown out by New Mexico. They barely beat San Jose State. They did get that win against Gonzaga, but they lost at Grand Canyon. They beat UC San Diego by 1. So it's a team that's not been that impressive away from home. So, I mean, Colorado State flashing, this is the time to buy them. I do worry a little bit about their interior. Greg, I'll go to you. Do you trust Colorado State in that spot first? And then what do you got from the weekend?
100%. Yeah, this was one of my best bets for later in the show, but Colorado State's the pick for sure for me. You spoke
this weekend.
Yeah. So the Auburn concerns are real. We talked about it last week. Like
their guards are horrific. Their guards can't throw it in the goddamn ocean. It's unbelievable.
No, they finally benched Aiden Holloway after like just a series of horrible performances. He comes off the bench in this one, 7 points in 19 minutes. But yeah, outside of Broome and Williams, they had single digits from everybody. Nobody could hit a shot, 25% from 3. I just don't know how you get to February, guys. They're literally getting to February. They haven't beaten a top 40 team in the country yet. And they've only played 3 of those games, but they're 0-3 against them. Baylor doesn't look as stout as they did at the beginning of the year when we were like impressed with that loss. So I don't know. The metrics love this team. I'm not really buying it. They still have games at Tennessee, at Florida, Bama, and Kentucky at home. I think there's going to be quite a few more opportunities to fade Auburn that I'm going to keep my eye on. And one other thing for the weekend for me, I'm done doing the whole American Conference dance with Florida Atlantic and Memphis. Both of these teams are not playing well at all. We don't have to pretend that there's much substance there. Maybe you can buy low with Memphis. Like, that team is old. They have talent. They have played well at points this season. Florida Atlantic, I don't know what the issue is. It certainly seems like a team that is just completely coasting and is not getting up for these games. And as long as they win by 3 points, they're happy. And maybe they can flip a switch when March gets here. But right now, I'm just wildly unimpressed with both. Florida Atlantic's opening is like a 12-point favorite no matter who they play, and it's not even close. Every single game is a one-possession game. I've avoided it just out of fear that something's going to get back right on track, but I think we still have a month or two left in the season where you might be able to jump on board late on that train and win some bets here.
The Memphis, I want to see what Memphis looks like in their next game, which they should win. They play Rice at home, but 2 close losses. And then, in a row, you go to UAB, you expect, at least a more focused effort. Their defensive effort was horrendous. They were not engaged at all, which is very concerning. And now they've dropped 3 straight. They had that game where they went nuclear from 3 against Wichita State. Before that, they, won at home at 107-101 in overtime over a bad UTSA team. So, Memphis is definitely trending in the wrong direction. I don't know if this is the time to buy, but I got to see more on the defensive end than what I've seen recently. Mike, what do you got from the weekend, or any rant? By the way, rant, before I go to you, not to interrupt, is my rant is fading. So I had LSU, which obviously didn't work out. Fading Alabama is just, the games feel like they're 17 years long. Because they're going to shoot 500 threes, and then they get an offensive rebound. More threes are coming, and then like they're going to hit 4 in a row at some point, and you're like, this is exhausting. I feel like I've been watching this game for 7 hours. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, Greg beat me to it on Auburn. I've been banging the drum that they do not have the guard play. They shoot 34% against Mississippi State, and they're now at a point where if Broom and Williams don't score 30 plus, like, they're not beating anybody with a pulse. So to kind of put like a positive spin on it, I'll throw it back to you guys. Like, who do you think can replace Auburn as that third team behind Kentucky and Tennessee? Not necessarily in the race to win it. I feel like that's clearly going to go to one of those 2 teams to win the regular season title. But in terms of power rankings, or however you want to think about it, being in that third slot of being a dangerous team coming out of the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, I think you have to say, you have to say Alabama. Their defense still has issues. They just have guys on the court that you can attack in the half court, but their offense is so good. And now what makes them a little, hard to trust come March is that they are very 3-point reliant. They're going to shoot their threes. And, now they can get to the rim too, and they're good in transition. But in March, when, games tend to get a little more half court oriented, if they have look at their losses this year, right? If you go Tennessee, 4 of 21 from 3. When they lost to Arizona, 8 of 40 from 3. So, that's in March, you run into a game like that, you're probably out, but they could also beat anybody in the country if they're hitting their threes. Their offense is that good. Would you agree?
Yeah. Great. Mark Sears is that good. That's the thing for me. Like, to your point, Mike, Broom has to be that for Auburn. He's not always that. Alabama has to get that from Sears every game, but Sears has been this for a month every single game now, other than the win against Missouri at home when he only played 25 minutes. Like, you go through the game logs, he's been above 20 points a game in 6 of his last 7. I think he is playing like a first-team All-American right now. I don't know if he's going to get that accolade at the end of the year, but there's just not many better guards in the country. I've really noticed I'm sure you guys have too. Second year transfers, when you get to the point where you're an up transfer, it takes a whole year to adjust. You might see flashes of brilliance. Sears is just so much better and more comfortable this year than he was last year. And I don't think that's a minor thing for Alabama. Like, do they have the team talent they had last year? Of course not. They lost 2 guys to the NBA. They lost the best freshman in the country. But I think when we do talk NCAA tournament time, give me a team with an elite point guard over a team that has some elite other positions. So I've talked myself back into Bama in general. And as far as the rest of the regular season goes, the 3-point variance is certainly scary anytime you bet on them or against them. But when you expand that sample size a little more, where it's not win or go home, it's, hey, this team has 12 more games left. Like, I trust they're going to be hot for 10 of those 12 more than I'm concerned that they're going to be cold any given day.
Yeah, Auburn. What's like Auburn's trending towards what? 3 seed, 4.
4
right?
seed sounds right. Yeah.
So it feels like they're, their defense is obviously legit. With starting with Broom, but it feels like put them in a 4 versus a good 13. That game's going to be like 63-59, 3 to go, right? Like it's just the way that it's, and they could get upset in the first round because. They can't really hit shots and they just go through these prolonged droughts because they just have erratic guard play, which feels like that's been what's held them back over the past few seasons under Pearl. So yeah, that's my fear there with Auburn. And Kentucky finally had a good defensive effort. I get it's Arkansas, and Arkansas is a disaster, but that's what I'm watching with Kentucky. We know that what their potential is offensively. And that's only going to get better, but can they fix and plug some of the holes that they've had on defense? So, again, it's Arkansas who's a mess right now, but it was at least a step in the right direction. I obviously need to see more on that front before I'm like convinced that they can make a run and not, because you're just not going to outscore everybody, 98-90 in the tournament. You're going to have to get stops eventually, especially when you're going up against, the elites. When you get to the Elite 8, you get to the Final 4. Assuming Kentucky could even get out of the first weekend. Christ. All right, let's talk a little Pac-12. We'll do a little buy, sell. Greg, I'll throw it to you because I'm always interested to see where you go with this. You usually are buying high or buying low, buying high and selling low. Or so what do you got this week? You always bring intriguing angles to this.
Yeah, I'm the reverse economist here. I think I might play this right, maybe, although I'm buying semi-high right now. I'm buying UCLA, who won games this past week. Hear me out, fellas. Mick Cronin is a great
I thought
coach.
you said you're doing this right.
Well, wait for the second half of this, believe me. UCLA has a great coach, okay? I wish I could sell this entire conference, to be point blank about this. I don't believe anybody outside of Arizona is a very particularly good team. None of these teams are teams I think are going to win NCAA tournament games, let alone maybe even get to the tournament outside of maybe Oregon and Colorado, who are accurately priced, right? So now you're weeding through 4 through 12 in this conference. It's a bunch of gross teams that I don't believe in. UCLA has caught my attention, okay? Anytime you win 2 out of 3 road games, that matters to me. And I know USC's missing a bunch of guys. The win at Arizona State, depending on which version of Arizona State you get, you can debate how impressive it is. But Mick Cronin is one of the best coaches in this league. He just is. Like, I don't love him. I'm very annoyed with him as a person and the way he approaches everything. But the man can coach basketball. And I think the big development here is that Stefanovic, who transferred in from Utah, he's been really good. He has 15, 18, 17, and 17 in this little 4-game stretch where they've won 3 of 4. Prior to January 14th, like, he was always kind of the periphery guy. They were playing through all the 18-year-old kids. I think they've realized Stefanovic is their best player. I don't know how much that's going to last, but look ahead this week. They're at home against Oregon State. They're going to be favored there. They're at home against Oregon, where I think they're probably going to be a home dog, would be my guess, unless they really blow out Oregon State. I think they can win both of these games, and they're probably going to be a little bit mispriced for the turnaround I think the Bruins have made.
Yeah, I to be fair, I actually had UCLA circled as a potential. We knew the defense is good. The offense was so bad early on. I mean, like, they had nothing, and they just could not. They would go in the half court, prolonged droughts. And you mentioned Stefanovic has really helped provide a boost. And Cronin is a good coach. He's figured some things out. He also got their attention, with all of his post-game rants and like, I'll find other people to be on the team. And it seems like they've rallied around it instead of, it could have went one of two ways. So I agree. I think UCLA is definitely a team to watch because the defense was there and the offense, they didn't need much. They need something, and they've gotten something, and Stefanovic has been a big part of that of late. I'm going to buy, I'll say I'm going to buy, and I know that they lost on Saturday, so maybe this is the point to do it, but I still see a lot of potential with Colorado. I mean, Colorado arguably has 3 NBA guys on their team. So like, Tad Boyle is a pretty good coach. I think some people overrate him in some circles, but they have so much talent that it's a team that I think has a lot of upside in this conference. I don't know if, I threw a flyer on them around 30-1 to make the Final Four. Again, it's 30-1. But I think maybe they're a team that I'll look to bet to win the Pac-12 tournament if they just have so much talent on that team that, and they're a really good rebounding team. So, you see flashes with Colorado, and then you just have these games where you're left scratching your head. But from a talent perspective, this is a team that, has at least has a lot of upside. Where are you going from a buy perspective, Calvary's?
So, had it not been for an overtime loss at Cal, I think you can make the argument that Wazoo's the hottest team in the conference right now. Kyle Smith, I've always liked him as a coach. He's been competitive and won everywhere he's been, Columbia, San Francisco. Like, he has Wazoo headed in the right direction. But for me, it basically comes down to Miles Rice. Like, this is one of the most underreported, like, feel-good stories in college basketball this year. He recovers from Hodgkin's lymphoma as his freshman year, comes back, and he's playing great. Like, he had 18-5-4 in their upset of Arizona, 35-8 against Stanford, low turnovers. He gets to the line. He gives them something to go along with Isaac Jones, the Idaho transfer, who's a double-double machine. He's got 6 double-doubles in his last 8 games. He's hard-nosed. He can hurt you on the glass. I think Washington State, it's a little bit late to be on the buy side. I still think, given the fact that they are who they are as a program, they're left in the wilderness of the Pac-2 and all those jokes. At 15-6, I feel like this is a team they're probably still going to need to at least get to the Pac-12 semis championship game to consider an at-large bid, if not having to win it outright. But I think they have the right mix, the right coach, and they got the marquee win over Arizona. So I've already seen it. It's not pure speculation on the Cougs.
Yeah, Kyle Smith has done a tremendous job. Think about Washington State was a team, this time last year, I said I'm circling them next year as maybe like a potential Final Four sleeper. But then they ended up losing everybody. Like, for everything that they lost to be where they're at right now, with all the talent they lost, because I was like, man, this team has so much potential if everyone comes back. So Kyle Smith's done a hell of a job with the Cougs. All right, let's go to the sell portion of the Pac-12. I assume you are selling high on someone here, Greg. You kind of teased that. Who are you selling?
I'm going to do it right this time. I'm selling the best team in this conference. I'm selling the team that just got the road win and the cover at Oregon that I got wrong, by the way. I was incorrect. I gave out Oregon money line as our pick. I loved the Ducks in that spot. It was the schedule spot, the dreaded Pac-12 schedule trap, which is now 4-17 instead of 3-17, by the way. But I have all the same concerns I had with Arizona coming into this Oregon game. And I can't get the Oregon State loss out of my head. I'm just seeing visions of just decrepit defense on the road. It's who they are to me. And I'm happy for them that they just got a comfortable win against Oregon. I guess that's a good thing. It's certainly a good win. Oregon's a good basketball team, but they needed 36 points.
Caleb Love just went nuclear. I mean, he couldn't miss.
Yeah, they needed 36 from Caleb. That's the thing. It's not like I didn't see anything sustainable from that game that makes me feel like Arizona's playing better. And if Caleb Love does the good Caleb Love thing, yeah, you're going to win all those games. If Caleb Love doesn't, it's hanging over the team's head. And you're looking at Kylan Boswell, who has been pretty awful over the last month. So I like what would be notable for me would be to see Arizona have like a stellar defensive performance in any of these games. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, they're back interested in this. Still don't think we're seeing that. They honestly remind me a lot of BYU guys for a lot of reasons. I know profile wise they're not the same, but all the analytics sites tell me BYU's great, even though BYU keeps having letdowns in conference play. And it comes back to them blowing out a bunch of undermanned opponents in the non-conference. To me, Arizona's a better version of that. It's a really talented team whose highest moments this season have been just destroying teams that most teams would beat by 20, by 50. And that does mean something, but it doesn't mean a lot going forward as we project this team for the NCAA tournament. So critical win, pat them on the back. I didn't see a thing that makes me want to buy back in on Arizona, and I will happily fade this team come March.
Yeah, I mean, I will say because I was wrong on Oregon too. Bartholomew, he looked bad. I don't know if he went to the hospital when, I mean, Oregon just can't stay healthy. And he's been playing a lot better of late. And I don't know of an update, but it didn't look good. He got carried off the court. And what that means now is I know you got Dante back. Biddle is going to be, he's going to get more minutes, but that means Shellstead has to do even more work at the point, and he's been bad recently. He's hit a wall. I mean, he was non-existent in that Arizona game, 2 points the game before against Arizona State, 6 against Utah. I mean, his offensive rating numbers over the past 4 or 5 games are very troubling. And now if he has to get more work just at the point and shoulder a bigger burden, that's not good news for the Ducks. I have a lot of respect for Dana Altman, but this team just can't stay healthy. They can't get any continuity. And now if the point guard position is going to be a major problem, I was looking to buy the Ducks. I might be actually looking to sell them. Mike, who are you looking to sell in the Pac-12?
I'll go ahead and sell Utah. I think I've seen enough. I know who they are. They're not going to steal a bid with a run in the conference tournament because you got to win away from Salt Lake City. And they're 0-5 on the road in conference this season. And aside from the 6-point loss to Stanford and Palo Alto, all those losses were blowouts. Brandon Carlson has a tendency to disappear a little bit on the glass. He only has 3 rebounds in his last 3 games. Putting up those kind of numbers, 3 rebounds per game is just incredible at his size and what he is capable of. And when he's not playing well, you look around the locker room, who's going to score, who's going to put the team on their back. I don't see any of the guards doing that. Raleigh Worcester is a nice facilitator, but his season high is 17 points this season. He doesn't bring anything special from long range. So I think given the fact that Utah has been so pedestrian, and I think that's being generous on the road, and the fact that they just don't have any answers from a rotation or potential for one player to go off other than Carlson, I'm just going to sell the Utes. I don't even think that they're a mediocre team in the Pac-12. I think they're going to finish in the bottom 6.
Yeah, very disappointing trip. I mean, they have been injured. Lovering and Worcester have been out. But, I mean, they just got absolutely destroyed on the Washington road swing. I think they lost by 25 and 22 or 23. So, yeah, I know they have had injuries, but still pretty disappointing year so far for Utah. All right, let's move on to the early week slate and talk a couple spots that we had circled. Greg, I'll throw it to you. I don't know if you want to go Colorado State first since you mentioned that, or somewhere else tonight. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll start with Colorado State. Both of my plays are for after today this week. So Colorado State's my first one. We talked about it earlier in the show, but they've been struggling lately. Of course, all of their losses in this struggle period have come on the road. I have questions with Nico Medved on the road for sure. This is still a team that's very, very good at home. San Diego State, you can flip it. Same thing. They've lost their last 2 away games in Mountain West play. It's an all-timer of a spot. Anytime you blow an 11-point lead, how are you going to respond? You're right. This is still a team that was in the AP poll last week. The metrics still like them, like back against the wall. Who are you? You have to have this game. Otherwise, you're probably on the outside looking in of the NCAA tournament picture at this point. The one thing matchup wise that I think matters to me here too, there's certainly things to be concerned on for both ends, but I was going through San Diego State's schedule, the 4 games they've lost this season, trying to find like what's the common denominator here. They've struggled defensively when the opponent has a really good ball dominant guy. And that sounds obvious. Like if you have a superstar, obviously you have a superstar, but San Diego State's an elite defense that maybe the only thing that gives them problems is when you got one guy like Isaiah Stevens. And that goes for Tyson Degenhart from Boise. Jalen House from New Mexico caused them problems. Tyon Grant Foster from Grand Canyon caused them problems. I think we need to see an Isaiah Stevens masterpiece here to feel good about Colorado State, but he's Isaiah Stevens. He's one of the best point guards in the country for that reason. So I'm going to buy the spot here. I'm going to take Colorado State. Ken Pom has them favored by 1 at home here. I would expect this number is more like 2 or 3 is my guess.
Yeah.
Maybe Stuck, you feel different, but I still like it up to 3.
Yeah, I agree. Probably be 2 or 3. All these spots now are in, would have been 1 3 years ago. But it's not the way the market works anymore. Much more efficient market, much tougher to beat with these spots. I'll have Colorado State, depending on what the line is, maybe some money line. But I agree, it's the spot of spots. Mike, what do you got for today or tomorrow?
I'll start tonight. I'll go with the total. I think it's the first time on the pod I've gone with the total this season, but under 130.5 Houston against Texas. Under is paid out in 70% of Houston games this season. As a road favorite, they cash in 75% on the under by an average of 7 points against the closing total. And it obviously makes sense. They're 350th in adjusted tempo. They're the number 1 defense by a wide margin, according to Ken Pom. They lead the country in opponent shooting efficiency. They're first inside the arc, defending shots. They're 8th outside the arc. And they only allow 11 assists per game, which is 40th nationally. So it's a lot of isolation ball. It's a lot of contested shots in the half court. And I don't like what I've seen from Texas really in the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to go ahead, another grinder kind of game. The Cougs playing exactly the way that they want to and going under the 130.5.
Yeah, that the Houston defense is something. I mean, man, they get after you, and they are relentless. I'll say tonight, I think I was hoping to get 4, which isn't going to happen. But, I mean, is this not the spot for Virginia Tech at home to upset Duke? Duke they look extremely vulnerable of late. It's a quick turnaround from a game that they stole at home against Clemson. But look at the 3 prior to that. I mean, they barely beat Georgia Tech at home. They lose to Pitt at home. And then they have a win over Louisville. So it's a team that's not playing its best basketball of late. Jeremy Roach isn't fully healthy, and now you have a quick turnaround. And it's a complex Virginia Tech offense with all the action that they run, which Duke has struggled with a bit on the perimeter. I think Virginia Tech can defend Duke on the perimeter. They have some weaknesses in the post, but Filipowski, he didn't look great Saturday. He could potentially have a really big game here and burn me. But this is a massive game for Virginia Tech. I need this, right? For your at-large hopes. You'll get a raucous crowd, quick turnaround for Duke with North Carolina on deck. So I think this is a spot to buy Virginia Tech, who's playing a lot better of late. And I don't think that they've had some, Padula specifically has had some turnover issues of late, but I don't think that's something that Duke is fully going to exploit. And they cruised on Saturday. I mean, they just demolished Georgia Tech. Easier for them to turn around on Monday, staying at home. I think this is a tough spot for Duke. I'm going to bet Virginia Tech tonight. Decent matchup on the perimeter, and I think it's just a great spot. Greg, you agree or disagree there?
I do agree. I think in a sick, weirdo way, I would almost feel better about this if Duke had just had an awesome performance against Clemson than kind of survive it, right? Because Duke is too talented, to keep up this mediocre run of play forever. Like, there's a game coming in the next couple of weeks where they're just going to shoot the lights out and run a team out of the gym. I don't think it'll be at Virginia Tech. It's also a look-ahead spot on the other side, right? They go at UNC. North Carolina this weekend. So, I think you're on the right side of that one, Stuck. I like it.
Yeah, I was happy that they got the foul call, because I definitely would have been a little more hesitant if Duke, lost their second straight home game. You probably get their attention. But under under Shire, it's not been a team that's been necessarily great in true road games. I think you talked about that earlier in the season, Greg.
Yeah.
So like that, and it's they had they have away wins against Pitt and Louisville this year, but they also lost at Georgia Tech. They lost at Arkansas. Is that the worst loss of any team this year if you lose against Arkansas? So it's a team that hasn't been great on the road, and you don't have a healthy Roach either. Well, we'll see. He could go full minutes, but quick turnaround, and he still seems to be a bit limited by a couple of nagging injuries. Greg, what else you got? You got one more spot for tomorrow?
Yeah, I've got one more for Tuesday, and this is two teams I know close and dear here. Michigan State hosts Michigan, rivalry game that is only available on streaming services this year. They saved the national public from this eyesore.
What's it on? Peacock?
I believe it's on Peacock, yeah, which has a Big Ten deal, which somehow I've coerced my wife into paying for, and it's the worst investment I've ever made because I get to watch horrible teams play twice a week. This is a big spot for Michigan State, though, for a bunch of emotional, non-tangible reasons. This is Tom Izzo's birthday. He's going for his 700th win as head coach at Michigan State. Bounce back spot after the debacle of a performance at Wisconsin. Most importantly, though, this game is about how horrible Michigan is and how horrible Michigan doubly is when Doug McDaniel is not available. He has the whole academic suspension just for road games going on. It's hanging over this team's head in a way I've never seen at the college level, quite frankly, guys. I mean, I've watched every single Michigan game. They're 1-8 against the spread in their last 9 games. Coincidentally, what happened in that span? Oh, they got the news that Doug McDaniel is going to miss half the rest of the season. Like, this team, whether they have him or not, something is so up emotionally and broken in this locker room. And on the court, they don't have answers. Like, they're such a interested team defensively. Michigan State is extremely dangerous when their shooters are left open. After that horrible start to the season, I mean, I think they were in the 300s on KenPom a month into the season in 3-point percentage. They're all the way up to 55th in the country now, shooting 37% as a team. They have good shooters, but they don't have the most dynamic guys to create the shots. You kind of have to take a defense that gives you them. Michigan will give them whatever they want in this game. So the other thing is Michigan State wins. When they win big. 11 of their 12 wins this season have come by double digits. KenPom has Michigan State by 11. I would guess this opens up at a pretty large number, but I would be absolutely stunned if Michigan State doesn't win this game by 20 or more points.
Yeah, it seems like I just run out of the gym spot and don't let up. Mike, got anything else for today or tomorrow?
Well, my wife also pays for Peacock, and I agree. The sporting events on Peacock are not so great, but the Real Housewives are all there. You can do the Real Housewives of the Potomac. Juan Dixon's wife is on that. You can, get a little college basketball connection. He's still having some romantic shenanigans. I don't want to, spoiler alert, I don't want to ruin anything for you. I'm going to go with Marquette as a short favorite at Villanova. I think this is a last stand moment for Nova. They've lost 5 of 6. I understand that they had that 1-point loss on the half-court shot against UConn, but the only win in this stretch came against DePaul. They continue to struggle to score because they can't shoot, 257th percentage-wise from the field. They're below average on the offensive glass. They only grab 8 there. Turnovers, they just don't create them, 261st nationally. So I don't see a lot of opportunity for them to turn things around or to get a night where they're burying a bunch of threes or, they get 15, second chance buckets or something like that. And I understand Marquette has injury issues. Cam Jones now questionable with the ankle injury. If he goes, this is an absolute play for me. I'd probably play it up to Marquette -4. But even if he doesn't, Kolek, to me, in their last meeting, he went for 21 and 11. I think he knows what he has to do to elevate his game. He's gone up and down a little bit in terms of scoring, but he still is averaging 9 assists per game this month. So I think he's doing enough for Marquette to beat, the middle class, and below in the Big East. So the fact of the matter is, this is just not the Nova teams of old where I was always waiting for things to change because Jay Wright had earned that respect. I think at this point, they're in an uncontrolled dive, and I don't see them pulling out of it. So I'll go with Marquette.
I'll throw out 2 more for Tuesday. We talked about the other side of the coin with Colorado State. Well, Wyoming pulls off that miraculous upset, and now they're going to Air Force. I know that they play in altitude, but so the altitude really isn't a factor here, but it could be in for the fact that quick turnaround. Wyoming has no depth. I mean, like a couple of their guys played 45 every minute of that game. Here's a trivia question. How many road games has Wyoming lost by single digits or one? The answer is 0. They lost to Portland by double digits. They lost at UTEP by double digits. And they've lost all of their road league games. So, they played some tough teams too, but this is a team that has not been good away from home. They have major turnover issues, which really show up on the road. They're also not really going to turn over Air Force, which is one of their bugaboos on offense. So maybe we get a cheap one possession number here after Wyoming beat Colorado State, but a tough turnaround here after just that miraculous win, playing all those minutes, just exerting all that energy. It was just such an emotional win. And then you have to turn around and go play, the Air Force snail, who's just going to ugly up the game. And then one other one. Should we talk about the elephant in the room? I know Greg won't bring it up, but if there's ever a time for a buy low, sell high spot, and an inflated number, Georgia Tech at home against North Carolina.
We almost made it. We almost made it through the whole episode. I was like, they're not going to do it. They're finally going to avoid the rat poison.
So,
no.
I mean, all right. So North Carolina continues to impress me, especially on defense. They covered again, by the way. And I said on the live show, someone beat me to it because I would have taken +7. Someone bet it. So it was like 6.5 to 6. And North Carolina somehow covered that game. It was like a 1-point game in the final minute. And they were playing the defense is what I'm just so impressed with. They're so organized, especially in transition. But I mean, if this isn't the top of the market on them, and by the way, teams are still only shooting 24% from 3 in league play. They have Duke. They just survived Florida State, take command of first place in the ACC. You have Duke next, but now you're going to lowly Georgia Tech. I want to talk about just a spot where you're flat and sleepy. Georgia Tech just got obliterated by Virginia Tech. I think they lost by 30. They lost at home to Pitt and Virginia before that. I might have to do it. I mean, just from a spot perspective, I got to hold my nose. Like, you want to talk about buy low, sell high? That's how I approach a lot of betting. Tell me this isn't the spot to sell North Carolina.
It's a spot, Doug. It's a spot. So it's look, I'm not a believer in Georgia Tech by any means, but you're right on the spot. What I will say is they've lost 8 of their last 9. 7 of those 8 games were single-digit ball games. So it's not like they've been getting ran out of the gym. They just got ran out of the gym at Virginia Tech. But you're right.
The only other biggest loss was 11 at Florida State. That was the rest of their games have been single digits.
Yeah, and they slow the game down. They've got a solid offense. Like, there are things they do that are conducive to covering a large point spread. And you're right, it's an all-time look-ahead spot. I'm a coward, though, Stuck. I mean, I'm just a point-blank coward. I can't do it. You're a more brave man than me.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. It just feels like a game where, North Carolina their defense has been super impressive, but they do have some 3-point regression coming on the defensive end, and and it's not like we talked about this before. It's not a team that doesn't take away the 3. Like, teams so it feels like a game where they're just a little disinterested early, little late on closeouts, and some Georgia Tech will go 10 of 22 from 3 or something. I can't imagine that North Carolina can go any higher ratings wise. And this might be the bottom on Georgia Tech after, you lose 8 of 9, you get blown out. And this team isn't going anywhere. So, remember, they did beat Duke at home. This is basically you're playing North Carolina, who's 9-0. And this is what becomes like a tournament game for them. It's like a Super Bowl. You'll get their best effort here, especially after getting blown out. I'm doing it. I'll troll myself on here and on Twitter after their North Carolina's up 21 at the half. But that's the way it works sometimes. All right, good stuff, gentlemen, on the Pac-12 weekend recap and weekday look ahead. keep in mind, as always, the guys from the Three Men Weave will be back on Wednesday, and then we will be back later in the week. Myself, Mike, for the weekend preview, and then we'll all be back on Saturday for the BBOC live show. Make sure you tune in there. Fun first show we had last week. We'll see if anyone goes head to head with me again. And judging by my performance last week, that'll probably be a good thing for you. But let me see if I did say I'll do some giveaways. Let me see if we got any recent reviews. Joey Pags, great pod, in-depth college basketball analysis. Love telling you guys, except for Wake Forest and against UNC. Oh God. Talk about timing. Unreal Common Sense group of dudes listen every week. Thank you. Keep crushing. That's from Pile 14. And then we already did him. Yeah. So appreciate Joey Pags, Pile or Pale 14. Reach out to myself or podcast at actionnetwork.com. I think, I don't know, or old boy Uncle Mitch, whatever. DM me, DM him, and we'll get you guys out some gear. So anyone else listening, a couple weeks, I'll do some more giveaways. Make sure you leave just a 5-star review. You'd say whatever. Those really help us out. But make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our producer on the back end. Thanks, of course, to Mike and Greg for joining me on this Monday morning fest. And we will see you later in the week. Good luck with all your wagers this week. Cheers.